Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be going over the Ixwa strike changelog, and obviously there was a ton of changes that came in this update. It was a very large one, not just from the amount of vehicles, but the amount of changes when it comes to bugs fixed or just general vehicle or map changes. So I'm going to split this video into a few parts, at least when it comes to recording. So if you hear some weird clunks or clips, that's basically why. I'm not going to cover the vehicles in this video. Basically, the vehicles we covered all on the dev server, and even though some of them have changed a little bit, overall I'm pretty happy with the coverage that was had. So we're not going to have a look at any of them. We're also not going to talk about Seversk that much. That will probably come in a later video once I have a bit more experience on the map when it comes to actual games at different BRs. So let's get into it. So the first part is location and missions updates, and it starts off with, in some missions, airfield models have been replaced with identical ones but with larger substrate areas in order to hide the hill effect when flying up to an airfield. So I'm pretty sure when they added in new airfields last year, sometimes it felt like they were just plonked there when it came to the map itself. And I'm guessing this effect is just to try and hide the hill that has been artificially created because of the airfield. Whether that's going to work or not is another story. There is also still some maps in the game. I remember playing on a specific Pacific map recently that just doesn't have an airfield for one side. The airfield is just a field, and there's no indication that it's an airfield apart from some dotted AA. So hopefully, they do fix stuff like that. The depth in most locations has been increased or reduced to historical values for naval gameplay. Well, there you go. Now you'll have to think a little bit more about how to use your torpedoes, but I don't think it'll make too much of a difference. Tank hulls that cannot be moved have been visually changed, so they cannot be confused with a recently destroyed vehicle that can be moved. Okay, that's good. It still would be nice to have a little bit more precision when it comes to the dead tanks, when it comes to their actual models, because I'm still running into issues when it comes to their physical appearance, and when you shoot and you're not actually hitting the vehicle, but it still hits the model of the vehicle. But the fact that they've done that just means that there'll be less confusion, and that's always good. The next part is for Enduring Confrontation, and they've fixed a lot of bugs and add a few different things. So a bug where the same ground battle might begin in several squares, some units spawned in one square, some in another, has been fixed, so therefore they'll actually look like they're actually fighting each other instead of fighting past each other. A bug where several battles might happen at the same time, usually two opposite battles in the same quadrant, has been fixed. I mean, that would that would have been chaotic as hell. So luckily they fixed that. AI bombers will now be spawned at different altitudes depending on the battle rank. This is also good, just means that it's a little bit more friendly, especially for the lower BRs, because sometimes it's quite hard to get up to those altitudes to be able to intercept the bombers. Enduring Confrontation, calcing goal. The positions of some airfields have been changed. Another potential position of a base for bombing has been added. So there you go. You have now another chance of being able to get your bombs off. Always good. You just got to find it. A bug where in some missions, some airfields were without air defense coverage has been fixed. Well, I could see why that would be an issue. A bug where a player that rejoined the game session increased the number of victory points for their team has been fixed. What? How? Okay. How does that happen? But yeah, that could really be exploited, so luckily they fixed that. A bug where, in the Enduring Confrontation mission in the location Tunisia, the airfields were too close to the center of the map, so that at higher ranks the time to approach the front line from distant airfields was too short. So pretty much you'd be able to get there very quickly and be able to power farm. And we all know about the issues when it comes to exploitation and Enduring Confrontation. The respawn time of anti-aircraft guns on airfields has been decreased. Previously, it could take several minutes after the mission starts. Obviously, this is good. More protection for airfields is better, especially at especially at lower BRs when people are trying to get into the game. A situation where the ground convoys stopped appearing has been fixed. Good. The maximum number of simultaneously active convoys has been increased from 1 to 3. This is awesome. Ensuring Confrontation needs to have stuff happening all the time. It needs to feel like an actual battlefield, and just more stuff going on is going to improve that. Some bugs with the appearance of convoys, which led to the occasional jamming or severe stretching of the column, have been fixed. The convoy vehicles should now move more evenly, as long as they don't do what they do in RRB, where they stutter step, is basically the way that I put it. So they'll go forward 5 meters and then stop abruptly, and then go forward another 5 meters. It's as if they're trying to dodge your shells. The convoy destruction task and highlighting of convoy vehicles in AB mode now occur when all convoy vehicles have spawned. Well, that's good, so you don't have a task that you can't complete because you can't kill anything because they're not all there. There is also a bunch of changes to ground vehicles as well when it comes to the updates, the ones which already were in the game, such as the parameters of the overheating of automatic cannons on ground vehicles has been revised and refined. Automatic cannons fed through magazines or limited capacity, e.g. 4 to 20 rounds, will now overheat more slowly. Automatic cannons with belt feed will now overheat faster during continuous firing. So this is obviously going to affect a lot of AAs. It's going to affect a lot of lower tier vehicles as well. So you're going to have to, at least if you are belt fed, you're going to have to keep a look at your reticle, a little bit more, so you can make sure you don't overheat. Damage resistance of tracks has been reduced. Now the tank's track should be torn by a single hit of a shell of 75mm caliber and above. So they've made tracks even more they've made tracks even more easier to knock off. They have reduced the repair time it takes to repair a track though, so it's not a huge deal. Generally I think it's overall okay. It's just a little bit annoying when you get RT'd over and over and over again, especially with the changes to artillery last year, but it's okay. It's not a huge deal with the repair changes. The material thickness of gun barrels for cannons of the caliber 40mm and more has been increased. So caliber 40 to 70 is going from 15 to 20. Caliber 75 to 90 is going from 20 to 30, caliber 100 to 130 going from 25 to 35, and caliber 150 to 183, 30 to 40. So this just means that there'll be a little bit less, it'll be harder to knock them out when it comes to the guns. So stuff like autocannons, stuff like vehicles like that should have a harder time of knocking barrels, or it should take a little bit longer or a few more rounds, but generally, at least when I've been testing it recently, it doesn't really change too much in that regard. So this just means it'll probably ricochet more shells which go into them instead of destroying the barrel itself. So with these changes, they've made tracks easier to destroy, but they've made tank barrels harder to destroy. And I think this is a positive change overall, just because it's very annoying facing AAs which are able to just gun your barrel over and over and over again. They've given a ton of new vehicles volumetric tracks as well, and this kind of ranges across the board. So the Centurion series, the Cromwell series, some T-54s, the Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, they've really expanded the amount of vehicles which have access to volumetric tracks, including a bunch of Italian vehicles and also the T-72 series, stuff like that. It's getting to a point now where I think we actually have more vehicles in the game which do have volumetric tracks compared to don't, and it's only been 2 updates since this new, I suppose, feature has been announced, which is really awesome. All of the M3A3s in the game, so the Chinese, French, and also Italian variants, all get smoke grenade launcher modifications. So you will have to respade those vehicles, but at the same time, they get smoke grenades, and that's pretty pretty cool. It just increases their survivability. As a light tank, that's always better. It's nice. The Merkava Mark 1 and the Merkava Mark 2B, they get the ESS modification, so you're going to have to respade those guys as well. That's going to be a little bit harder since they're much more higher BR vehicles, but at the end of the day, they're quite fun vehicles if you have access to them. The ESS isn't that useful at high tiers since thermals exist and ESS doesn't block thermals, so you just end up either smoking off your team, or you just end up not actually. It kind of gives you a false sense of security in a way. The Type 90 and the Type 90B, the fire rate has been changed from 12 to 15 shots per minute. BR in all game modes has been changed from 10.3 to 10.7. So both Type 90s now have a 4-second reload. And remember, it's an automatic loader, so therefore your crew skills don't impact it. So a 4-second reload, and at the same time, their BRs go up to 10.7. I would actually prefer if they stayed at 10.3 with the 5-second reload. The 5-second reload already pretty much out-reloaded, or was one of the top reloads at top tier. And the Type 90s in themselves were incredibly fun vehicles to play. When I was spading the standard Type 90, probably my favorite spade, and it was because you weren't always in those matches where it was full 10-7 ones. You would have the occasional one where it would be a 10-3, 9-3 game, and you could dominate very aggressively. Now with them at 10-7, you won't be able to do that, and the top tier Japanese lineup still struggles with a little bit of support, but I suppose it's got a lot better with the Apache and the F4EJ over time. Maybe that is a monstrous lineup now, or at least a lot better than what it was before. The 105mm M774, the penetrator length has been corrected, changed from 347 to 375, and the penetration has been recalculated accordingly. Basically, the M774 shell, which you find on stuff like the Abrams, and also I believe one of the M60s, has got a lot better in penetration, and therefore has got a lot better at dealing with targets. This just means that it's a buff to the Abrams and to some of the American vehicles and other vehicles which do use the M774 round, so have fun with that. A bunch of aviation changes came in as well, such as the UH-1C, the display of the suspended 40mm grenade launcher when mounting blocks of FFR missiles has been fixed. The A129 International, the cockpit armor material has been fixed. The F6F5, it now has separate bomb drops for the 1,000-pounders, and same with the F4U7. This is actually a huge change because it means getting 2 independent bomb drops off. That means you can guarantee 2 independent kills in ground realistic, and also 2 independent drops in air realistic, meaning that you can get more ground targets. This is a big change, and it's a big buff to both vehicles. The Brigand B1 bomb weaponry options have been extended. Well, hopefully that means it gets access to some more stuff. The Gazelle, the SA342M, a bug with display of the suspended pods in one of the presets of the weaponry menus has been fixed. Fair enough. The A32A ballistic calculator has been added, so that will help it in ground forces, make it a little bit more useful. The SPD3 armor elements have been fixed, that's good for it. The A26B10 armor elements and tear-off damage has been fixed, good. For some aircraft, the wing tear at the attachment points of suspended weaponry has been corrected to exclude the appearance of floating suspended armaments after a tear has taken place on a damaged aircraft. That is quite nice because it did all look very odd when you had a piece ripped off, but there was still a piece floating there. The erroneous display of the GSH-23 cannon in some cases has been fixed for the suspended UPK-23-250 cannon pod. Good stuff. And the A7D, the new AGM-65A missiles of the air-to-surface class have been added. Hood and radar warning system have also been added to the cockpit. So we've talked about the Mavericks already. I think they have the chance of being game-breaking, and I really don't like fire and forget weaponry. I don't think it takes a lot of skill. I don't think it's something that should be promoted too much, and there's already a lot of things at top tier or high tier that you just randomly get killed by, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now there's just another one. And once again, China doesn't even have a radar-guided AA. What are we doing? Heads-up displays were also added to the AV-8A, the AV-8C, the Harrier GR1, the Harrier GR3, Buccaneer S2, F4E Phantom 2, F4EJ, the FGR2 Phantom, the FG1 Phantom, the F104G, the F104J, and the F104S. So a decent amount of vehicles, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. The Z1007 BIS Series 35, the Italian bomber, armor has been added. Well, that's nice. The F104J, the number of AIM-4 missiles has been increased to 4, and also it can now carry AIM-9Ps. That is quite impressive for that vehicle. The Ka-52, onboard defense systems, the L-370 Vitebsk, President S with incoherent suppression station has been added. This is a passive protection system designed to stop missiles, so we'll have to see how it actually works in the game. The I-16 Chung 28 and the I-16 Type 5, the Mark of the Republic of China, has been added to the localization. Well, that's good. The F-104G and S ballistic computers have been added, so once again, those will be easier to use in a ground realistic sense. The Jaguar GR1 bomb ballistic computer has been added, the CCRP, so basically the arcade marker in realistic. That, at least in my opinion, that system that they have is incredibly overpowered when it comes to high-tier ground realistic. The X-23M missile control mode has been changed to manual by 3 points for implementation of the radio command line guidance system Delta NG. Not entirely sure what that's actually talking about there. For the P3P, P3C, and PL2 missiles, overload limit on launch has been increased to 4G, so you'll be able to launch them when you're under a little bit more stress. The AGM-71 TOW and also TOW-2 in-game designation has been changed, so the TOW has been changed to ITOW, and the characteristics and explosive weights have also been changed, where the max distance of it has been increased to 3,750. Chaff has also been added for all aircraft featuring flares. Flares/chaff ratio option has been added, as well as options only flares or only chaff. So you're able to use chaff now, which is pretty cool. It does mean that it's just another mechanic that has people who are the haves and also the have-nots, and that's a bit of a problem. A click on the target lock button activates the caging of the IR seeker for the target seeker in homing mode without a signal from radar. A second click deactivates the seeker. Well, that's cool. Just makes the system a little bit more easier. The AIM-7 semi-active radar seeker missiles have been reconfigured for more realistic behavior. The seeker operates more poorly when locking targets flying against the background of the Earth across the direction of the missile. The range of locking tail on targets at low and medium altitudes has also been reduced. So they're not going to be as good at tracking things which have, the ground behind them. So it's much better to track stuff which you only see blue sky behind. The A7D battle rating in RB game mode has been changed from 9.7 to 10.0. This should have happened a long time ago, not just because of its ground realistic performance, but also the fact it gets an airspawn in air realistic and was able to can stuff with its AIM-9Js and ridiculous guns. They've done a bunch of flight model changes too, the first one being the Saab SK60B. There was a bug that has been fixed with the incorrect calculation of the parasitic drag for gun pods. Thrust reverse has also been added. So if you haven't tried it out, the thrust reverse is actually pretty cool on the SK60B and how it works. When it comes to parasitic drag for gun pods, I hope that means that it has to drag a little bit more, but we'll have to see how it works. The SB2U 2 and 3, the Wirrarray, the IAR-81C, and also the Key 32, the flight models have been updated. Engine operating modes have been clarified, the distribution of fuel across the tanks have been corrected, polars of the wings, fuselage, and propeller blades have been recalculated and updated. Behavior of the aircraft during the retraction of flaps has been clarified. Improved aircraft behavior when diving at high angles. So once again, I will have to test out the IR-81C. It's actually a pretty fun plane to fly, so hopefully these changes are cool for it. The CW21, nosing down during aggressive braking, has been reduced, stabilizer airflow has been improved, a more correct stall at low speeds has been introduced, and climb rates has also been slightly reduced. The CW21 is the monster of low ranks when it comes to realistic. It's one of the best planes to fly, a lot of engine power, and good guns to boot. The TAR-152H1, nosing down during aggressive braking, has been reduced, stabilizer airflow has been improved, more correct stall at low speeds has been introduced. Sounds pretty cool as well. The DO-335, all modifications. All control links have been replaced from cable to tubular, giving more precise and responsive control. The wave drag of the wing profile for a thinner profile has been improved, resulting in better dynamics at high speed. Mechanization efficiency has been improved by enabling flaperons. I love that word. Different inertia for the propeller group for the front and rear motors has been adjusted as well. So that should definitely change the way the 335s work. All of the Focke-Wulf 190s, probability of nodding during aggressive braking has been reduced. Interesting. I'm guessing that's the finding a penny. All of the Hurricane modifications, a bug leading to the wrong speed for the destruction of the flaps. Landing position is permissible at speeds not exceeding over 200 or 120 miles per hour has been fixed. Well, that's lovely, so it'll be a little bit easier to fly them. The P-61s, all of them, a bug that makes it possible to fire from offensive weaponry when the landing gear is released has been fixed. Fair enough. The F-104, all modifications. To improve the landing properties of the aircraft, boundary layer control has been added with full release of flaps and a running engine. So that should be easier to use now. The A7D, an issue causing incorrect additional weight and drag data after the GAU-13A gun pod's installation. Weight and parasitic drag have been improved, so it should be a little bit easier to fly it now, even with all of the extended weaponry it has. There are a ton of naval changes too, starting off with the naval weaponry. AI gunners will no longer attempt to hit targets they cannot damage. For example, gunners of 37, 40, and 76mm won't shoot battleships. Okay, that's a little bit odd. I would rather they did shoot the battleships. At least I can still manually target them, so therefore they can at least annoy them, I suppose. Would be a nice thing to be able to do. 100mm by 70 SM51 turrets. The explosive types and weight has been corrected for F55 and OF55 rounds. 356mm 45 gun, 41-year type, basically the Hyuga's guns. Weight, type, and velocity of the AP round has been corrected. Stock HE shell has been changed to an SAP round. Well, that's nice, because having a round as stock which can't pen anything of that BR is always not very fun. The USS North Dakota, the stock Mark 17 AP round has been changed to HE shell. New AP shell Mark 7 is now available to research. Why? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to get punished for being a stock vehicle? You've just changed the Hyuga so it has a better stock round, and now you've given a HE round to the North Dakota. Why? Why do this? It's just going to make the grind for a lot of people even worse. The SMS Helgoland, the SAP shell, has been added to the first level of research. AP round moved to second and requires research again. RP and SL spent on this round has been refunded. So they're just removing the round from you, and you have to research it again. Fun. Oh, I tell you what, top tier naval just seems like a dream. You can't die, you just sit there, and every so often you get ammo racked or bombed to death. Wonderful. Oh, by the way, if you really want to see like power creep, or you really want to see a lot of the issues that many people from aviation or ground talk about when it comes to, the power creeping idea and top tier being crazy, good compared to its predecessors. It is ridiculous in naval when you compare 6.0s to 5.7s. These 6.0s have such an advantage over the 5.7s to the point where they just can't die. It is so ridiculous. Traverse speed of the 102mm 45 gun Mark 16 and 102mm fast-firing Mark 5 gun on British naval vessels has been corrected according to the turret they're mounted on. Nice. The 135mm 45 gun Auto Mod 1938, the rate of fire has been increased to 7.5 RPM. That will help out a lot of the Italian boys, and the 100mm naval cannon Minesini fire rate has been lowered to 12 shots per minute. So that kind of sucks, but that 135 change is really big for some of those cruisers in the Italian territory. The Leipzig, Nuremberg, Kern, Chapayev, Sverdlov, Zeleznyakov, Krasny, and Kavkaz. The ready-use ammo has been removed for the main caliber cannons. Fire rate is now constant. Okay, so you don't have a first stage ammo stowage, basically. The Suzuya, Mikuma, Megami, and Isuzu ready-use ammo for the 127mm 40s of the Type 89 have been added. Fire rate for the cannons of these shells has been changed to 14 shots per minute. So, changes across the board when it comes to stock shells and also fire rates for a lot of vehicles. They've also changed a bunch of the damage model stuff for naval. So the damage model on ammo stowage has been changed for battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Fire and detonation of the magazines are fatal to the ship. The explosion and detonation of the shell room do not lead to complete disabling of the ship, but lead to severe destruction around the stowage area, hull breaches, and also fires. So they've been going back and forth on these ideas for a long time when it comes to ammo stowage, and if it detonates, does it blow up the ship, or what does it do? And to be honest, I would much prefer it be like that, because then otherwise ships just don't die. I have watched game after game after game of battleships never dying, and then people complaining about the repair costs even though they never pay them because they never die. So this, in my opinion, is a good change. It actually means that the flow of battle will be a little bit better, and you will have to aim your shots a little bit more, and instead of just sitting there and doing nothing, sitting there and just lumping shells, which is what a lot of battleships do. Some types of fires have been reworked for battleships and cruisers. Fires in main caliber turrets, ammo elevators, and some internal rooms have become more dangerous. Fire from turret fighting compartment may go down inside bar beds, ignite the elevator, and go to ammo stowage. Shell stowages are more durable against the fire than magazines, and may be affected by fire for longer. Both shell and magazines may explode if fire isn't distinguished. If fire destroys the stowage, it will inevitably explode. So once again, trying to find ways of being able to kill battleships is basically the way that this is reading as so far, because they haven't been able to be killed since they've come out, apart from other battleships, and even then they just end up shooting each other over and over again. Damage model for APSAP and base fuse HE shells have also been corrected. Kinetic damage parameters have been increased in accordance to their energy. Spread sectors, damage, and armor piercing capabilities of shell fragments have been fixed. Main damage comes in focus cones in the direction of the projectile and the sides of it. The weakest fragments were left in the bottom section. The fuse arming and delay parameters have been changed so that, depending on the caliber and class of the ship being fired at, the shells are armed at certain modules and thicknesses. The delays of the fuses are selected so that the shells explode closer to the middle of the ship's beam at its average values, entry angles, etc. For many shells, the parameters of the loss of speed in flight, air resistance, and flight time have been clarified, which led to some changes in armor penetration. So they're overall changing the damage model for a lot of naval shells. We'll have to see how this impacts the changes to the actual ship damage models themselves. I'd just like to thank Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez B. Young, Hosest Kishore, Hans, Bareen, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.